education, especially in Title I low-income schools, so that every kid in America gets the education they deserve. In a nation in which Major League ball players can sign contracts for hundreds of millions of dollars, we can pay teachers $60,000 a year in salary. A 100 years ago, when we talked about, well, when some people talked about, not us, talked about public education, they talked about first grade through 12th grade, free public education. Iowa was one of the leaders in that whole development of public education. That's right. And 100 years ago, that was a revolutionary idea. Because what people said, you know what, it should not just be the children of the rich who get a good education. We want working class kids to do that as well. Well, in this moment in American history, when we talk about free public education, we can't limit it to the 12th grade. What we have got to determine, and by the way, this is happening all over the country right now, I'm happy to be one of the leaders of this, is that when we talk about free public education, it must include making public colleges and universities tuition free. And if we can give massive tax breaks to the 1% and large profitable corporations, we can cancel all student debt in America. And when we talk about the issues that are on the hearts and minds of the American people, there's no issue, I think, that people are on a personal level more involved with than the issue of healthcare, because at the end of the day, everybody accesses the healthcare system. You need healthcare, you know. And I want to be very clear on this issue so there's no misunderstanding. In my view, the current healthcare system is not only dysfunctional, is not only enormously wasteful, it is a very cruel system. I believe that health care is a human right, not a privilege. And I believe that it is totally absurd. I want people to hear it, because you don't hear it too often. I want you to be thinking about, how does it happen that here in America we are spending twice as much per capita on health care as do the people of any other country, and yet our health care outcomes are often worse, and 87 million Americans are either uninsured or underinsured. We are spending twice as much as the Canadians and the Europeans, and yet 30,000 Americans die each year because they don't get to a doctor on time. We're spending $11,000 a person for every man, woman, and child, and yet 500,000 people go bankrupt every year because of medically related bills. Got that? I want you to think about that. All right? If you go out gambling and you lose your money and you go bankrupt, hey, that's your fault. You get involved in a risky business venture, you want to make a fortune, you lose your money, it's your choice. You buy a house you can't afford, you go bankrupt, that's your decision. But if you come down with cancer or heart disease, or somebody in the family comes down with Alzheimer's in the United States of America, you should not go bankrupt because you have a serious illness. That is cruel. That is not what this country is supposed to be about. The function of the current healthcare system today is very clear. What is it? What's the function of the healthcare system today? Is it to provide quality care to all in a cost-effective way? What's the function? There you go. All right. The function of the current healthcare system, which everybody knows, is to make the insurance companies and the drug companies enormous profits, to make sure that the CEOs of those corporations receive lavish compensation packages. Everybody knows that. So last year, while many Americans, in fact, 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford the medicine they need, the top 6 drug companies made $69 billion in profit. Last year, I took a group of people with diabetes from Michigan over the Canadian border to buy insulin. Anyone here know the differential in price between the same exact insulin, same company, in Canada compared to the United States? What's the differential? Gentlemen got it. 10 to 1. So how in God's name does it happen that the same product is sold a few miles away from the United States for 1/10 the price that it is sold in America? And the result of that is that there are many people in this country, millions, who are actually rationing their insulin, who are diabetic. And it's not just insulin, it is many, many prescription drugs where we pay far and away more money than the people of other countries. We remain today the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. As President of the United States, I will help lead to end that international embarrassment. We will pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. We will take on the greed and corruption of the drug companies. And I use the word corruption advisedly because they engage in massive amounts of price fixing. And in terms of the opioid epidemic, which has been such a disaster for our country, you all understand that they were selling a product aggressively that they knew was addictive and was killing thousands and thousands of Americans. That kind of criminal activity, that type of corruption, that type of price fixing will end. We are going to take them on. We are going to substantially lower the cost of prescription drugs in America. Now, some people say, and I want to take a moment to be very clear about what Medicare for all means, because you got an industry, you got a president, you got a Republican Party, you got some Democrats who will distort what Medicare for all means. So I want to be clear. Right now, you have a program that you all know was developed back in the mid-1960s called Medicare. It is a good program, not a perfect program, but it is the most popular health insurance program in the country. But in order to get into Medicare, you got to be 65 years of age, okay? So what Medicare for all means is the following. First of all, we improve Medicare by expanding benefits to include dental care, to include hearing aids, to include eyeglasses, and to include home health care. So, number one, we expand Medicare basically to cover all health care needs. Now, some of you are sitting there and saying to yourselves, I hear this every meeting, what about mental health? Because mental health, we have a mental health crisis in America. From coast to coast, people cannot get the help that they need. Yes, of course, Medicare for all covers mental health issues. So what does Medicare for all look like? How is it different than the current system that we have? How do we pay for it? Fair questions. Bernie, that was a great question. Now I'm going to give you the answer. Okay. First thought. Okay. And I want to ask you some help, your help on this issue. All of you know healthcare is very, very expensive. So we got to think about two things. How do we pay for it today? How are we paying for it today? And how does Medicare for All pay for it? Well, what Medicare for All will do, stay with me here for a moment, it eliminates all premiums for you as a worker and for your employer. All right? You don't have that, you don't have that payment to the insurance company every month. Premiums gone. We end co-payments. So you don't have to pay that $50 or that $100 when you walk into the doctor's office, which, by the way, prevents a whole lot of people from going to the doctor's office. Then we also end one of the most insane concepts that I have ever heard of. We take it for granted, but it is an insane concept nonetheless. It's called deductible. I want you to think about a deductible. You pay money for insurance. You assume that you will be able to go to the doctor when you need to. Not with a deductible, because with a deductible, you may have a $5,000 deductible, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000, whatever it may be. You got to pay the first amounts of money out of your own pocket. And in fact, insurance may never even kick in. We eliminate all deductibles in America. We eliminate all out-of-pocket expenses because Medicare for All is comprehensive and it's going to cover your needs. And because we are going to lower prescription drug prices in America, nobody in this country will have to pay more than $200 a year for prescription drugs. Now, some of you are thinking it sounds pretty good. Maybe it's too good to be true. How are you going to pay for it? Well, I'm not here to tell you that getting comprehensive health care is free. Wish I could tell you that, would not be true. You're going to have to pay for it. Well, how do we pay for it? Well, remember, no more premiums, no more co-payments, no more deductibles, no more out-of-pocket expenses. All right, how do we pay for it? Well, we pay for it through a variety of ways, but the way that would impact most Americans is we will have a 4% income tax exempting the first $29,000. So if you make $29,000 or less, you don't have to pay anything. If you are the person right in the middle of the American economy, that person, that family, earns about $60,000 a year. That's the median family in America. $60,000 minus $29,000 exemption leaves you with $31,000 taxable dollars at 4%, which is a little over $1,200 a year for comprehensive health care. A pretty good deal. So let me ask you a quick question here. All right, in terms of, that's how I think we should pay for it. How do we pay for it today? How much are you guys paying in premiums? Anyone want to help me out here? Don't be shy. Raise your hand. $200 a month, that's pretty cheap. Yeah. $600 a month, that's $7,200. I would imagine you have a deductible? Okay. You stand up. Misty, give her the mic. Tell us your name.
My name's McKenna Driscoll.
Okay. My wife's maiden name was Driscoll. Maybe you're related. I don't know.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
All right. Tell us again what you're paying.
I'm paying $600 a month and $10,000 in premium, or in deductibles.
Okay, that means, correct me if I'm wrong here, that before your insurance kicks in, you're going to have to pay the first $10,000 out of your own pocket.
Yep.
And it looks to me like many people in this room, working class, middle class people, that's a pretty heavy burden on you and your family, yeah?
I'm a single mom.
Single mom, okay. A lot of money, yes? Okay. That's one way we pay for it. Who wants to help me out other ways? Premiums. What are you guys paying on premiums? Okay. Premiums. Anyone else want to volunteer? Okay. I have gone, just so that you know this, nationally for that family of 60,000, right in the middle of the American economy, more or less the average family. That family's paying $12,000 a year for health care. That is 20% of their income. Okay. What about deductibles? Anyone mentioned a $10,000 deductible? What kind of deductibles do people have here? Anyone want to? I know no one likes to speak in front of a TV camera. Yeah. Anyone want to mention it? How much? $3,000. You got to pay out of your own pocket. Yes, ma'am. It was $6,000 after you used it. You have to pay $2,000 more. Okay. So this is before insurance kicks in. This doesn't include co-payments. It doesn't include a lot of other things. Deductibles. Anybody else want to volunteer what they're paying in deductibles? You have $1,800 compared to other people. Yeah, not too bad. All right, anybody? Okay. So my point is, we pay for health care today in a variety of ways. The average family pays $12,000, and if that person is in a private insurance plan with an employer, private employer, the employer pays $14,000 a year. Now, the reason we can save money is we end the profiteering in the insurance companies and in the drug companies, and we end an enormously complicated bureaucratic system which wastes some $500 or $600 billion a year trying to administer thousands of separate health insurance plans. On our plan, there is one plan. When you go to the doctor, you take out your card. That's it. You don't take out your wallet or your credit card. Just take out your little Medicare for All card. If you end up in the hospital and you got a serious illness, you come out and the bill is zero. We pay for it through public funding. It is a simple system. And somebody may say, well, this sounds like a radical idea. Is it a radical idea? This is an idea which more or less exists in countries all over the world. I live in Burlington, Vermont, 50 miles away from the Canadian border. I've been up there. I've been in their hospitals. People spend, weeks, a month in the hospital. The only bill that they have is for the parking lot if they park their car there. And do you know what that means? Think for a moment what that means in the stress level of ordinary people. Think about your ability to go to the doctor when you are sick and not having to worry about whether you can afford it. Think about if, God forbid, you or somebody in the family gets sick. You got to then worry about how you get well again, get back to feet, not how you're going to have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical costs. We have an insane system here. We got hospitals billing poor people. Hospitals are going broke. Poor people can't afford to pay it. I mean, it's just a vicious and ugly and dysfunctional and cruel system. So our goal is very simple. We are going to join the rest of the industrialized world. We're going to guarantee health care to all Americans as a human right, not a privilege. We are going to take on the greed of the drug companies and the insurance companies. And finally, by the way, this idea, I don't want anybody here to think about it. I got a big ego, but I don't want you to think this is some idea that I invented. I did not. We have been talking about health care for all in this country from Teddy Roosevelt, well over 100 years ago, to FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the 30s and 40s, talking about it from Harry Truman, talking about it from Lyndon Johnson, John F. Kennedy, Barack Obama. We've been talking about health care for all. After 100 years of talk, the time is now to finally accomplish it. There's another issue that I want to say a few words on that is of monumental consequence. And the more I study it, the more worried I become. And that is that anybody who stands before you and tells you that climate change is not real is not only lying to the American people, but they are also committing a huge disservice to their own children and grandchildren and future generations. And what the scientists are telling us is not only that climate change is real, not only that it is caused by human activity, not only that it is already causing terrible damage in our own country and around the world. Anybody with eyes, you all see what's going on in Australia right now? This large, beautiful country is in the process of burning. It is burning up. In California, all of you have seen the terrible fires that ravaged California. You're aware that a month or two ago, Venice, Italy was underwater from an unprecedented torrential rain. Houston, Texas, same thing. What the scientists are now telling us is they have underestimated the speed and the degree to which climate change is ravaging this planet. That means if we do not get our act together, and for the future of future generations, we must get our act together. If we do not, the planet warms by 4 or 5 degrees centigrade by the end of the century. You will have major American cities like Miami, Charleston, South Carolina, New Orleans, Louisiana, New York City, other major cities, partially or completely underwater. You will have major countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, parts of China, partially underwater. You will have drought, which means that farmers in Iowa will not be able to produce the kind of crop production which they are producing today, and the quality of the food will decline. You're talking about more extreme weather disturbances. You're talking about acidification of the ocean and warming of the ocean, which means that fish life will die, meaning that people who get their protein from fish will not be able to get the food that they need. You are talking about more fires, and what the United Nations tells us, that if we don't get our act together, there will be over 100 million climate refugees. People no longer to stay in their communities because there's no water, there is no food. So on this issue, we don't have a choice. Now, I have been criticized because I have brought forth the most comprehensive climate change proposal in the history of presidential politics. And I've been criticized by that. But I am proud to tell you that we have the support of the Sunrise Movement, because they understand, as the scientific community understands, that now is the time for bold action. And that means we have to implement what we call a Green New Deal. And that means that we're going to take on the fossil fuel industry, and we are going to tell them in no uncertain terms that the future of this planet is more important than their short-term profits. And a Green New Deal can create up to 20 million new, good-paying union jobs as we transform our energy system. And I want all of you to think, yep, I've been criticized because I have a major proposal which is expensive. But I want you all to think about what the alternative to that is. How much money should we save by allowing this planet to be destroyed? So I think from a moral responsibility, we have got to do everything that we can to make sure that the planet we leave our children and our grandchildren is a planet that is healthy and a planet that is habitable. Number of other issues out there. I just want to touch briefly. There's so many issues out there. We could spend 5 hours here and not exhaust them. Just wanted to touch on a few. Today in America, We have a criminal justice system which is not based on justice. It is a racist system, it is a broken system, and we must be embarrassed that we have more people in jail today, over 2 million, than any other country on earth, including China. So what we have got to do, it seems to me, is to invest our resources in jobs and education for our young people, not more jails and incarceration. It means that we have got to end private prisons and detention centers. It means that we have got to end the so-called war on drugs and legalize marijuana in every state in this country. But it's not just a broken criminal justice system. We have a broken immigration system as well. And as president, on my first day in office, I will sign an executive order repealing all of Trump's racist immigration executive orders. And that means, among other things, re-establishing the legal protections for the 1.8 million young people in the DACA program. It means ending our current border policy, southern border policy, so that we will not have federal agents snatching babies from the arms of their mothers. And most importantly, it means that we can and will pass comprehensive immigration reform. Under our administration, we will develop gun policy, which does everything humanly possible to end the kinds of mass shootings that have pained all of us over the last many years. Our gun safety policies will be dictated by the American people, not the NRA. And one other issue that is on the minds of people I know here in Iowa, but all across this country, is I'm a United States Senator, and I hear my colleagues on the floor of the Senate, my conservative colleagues, talking about how they want to get government off the backs of the American people, how they believe in small government. And what I say to them, if you believe in getting government off the backs of the American people, understand that it is women who must control their own bodies, not politicians. So my promise to you is that I will never nominate anybody to the U.S. Supreme Court or other federal courts who is not 100% pro Roe v. Wade. Okay, I've gone on for probably too long. I have that tendency. And we got to hit the road soon. So, all right, anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, I see a woman right here. Yeah, ma'am. Yes, right here. Yeah, we're going to get, okay, Bill has a mic. Misty, where are you? Where's Misty? Misty has a mic too. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Hi, Bernie. My name's Jenna.
What's your first name?
Jenna.
Jenna?
Jenna. Yeah. So anyway, the abolishing electoral college, is this on your...
Look, what we have now is an electoral system which is clearly in need of major reform, right? Okay. And that is, when we talk about democracy, what we mean is majority rules, right? That's kind of what, if I get 1,000 votes and you get 900 votes, I usually win, right? Well, that's not the way this system works, because you got a president who is in the White House who won the Electoral College but lost the popular election by 3 million votes. Okay? So to answer your question, yes, we need to reform our electoral system so that the candidate who wins the most votes becomes president.
Is this something you are committing to in the next 4 years as your presidency?
We're going to work absolutely. I mean, it's not something you can do overnight. Well, it's not, the President of the United States doesn't sit there and say that we do that, but it's a process that we're going to have to change the Constitution and so forth to do it. Okay. Yeah, I see a hand way back there.
I'm a big fan of your Medicare for All policy, and I often hear it touted the success of these programs in other nations. My question to you is, would you be willing to adopt other healthcare policies from these nations, and specifically the policy in the United Kingdom that vaping is 95% less harmful than smoking, and smokers that are unable to quit by other methods should transition to those products?
I think we got one of the good pieces of news in healthcare is the cancer rate, I think, is going down. And that's because we're making some progress at getting off of cigarettes. I'm not a great fan of vaping, and I think it's something that we have got to study. But we have to ask ourselves why it is. And I'll tell you this from a personal perspective. When you look at the tobacco industry, and some of you may have seen those photographs of tobacco executives standing up and lying to Congress. You remember that? Lying to Congress about, we have no evidence to suggest that tobacco is dangerous, when of course it killed people. My own father smoked 2 packs a day. He died before he was 60. Look, we're going to look at all the alternatives, but I'm not overly impressed. Vaping is a problem as well, but we'll study the issue. But I got to tell you, I'm not a big fan of it. Okay, got a question right here. This thing.
Support a climate. Would you enact a climate emergency on day one?
I have introduced legislation along with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to declare climate as an emergency situation. That was the fossil fuels industry's responsibility. I couldn't believe they're nervous. All right. Yes,
Hi, my name is Caitlin. As a young person, I'm particularly interested in hearing how you would address the opioid epidemic as it pertains to youth and young people.
Okay. Here's the general outline. And that is to understand that addiction, opioid addiction, alcohol addiction, tobacco addiction, other types of addictions are serious, serious illnesses. So they have to be treated from a healthcare perspective, not a criminal perspective. Right now, that's number one, okay? And we are woefully inadequate. Vermont is doing a better job than most states, and we're not doing all that we should. In other words, if you are addicted, this is no easy thing. Everybody knows people who are dealing with alcohol. They're dealing with drugs. This is tough stuff to get people off of their addiction. But we have got to provide the resources and the counseling and the treatment. That's number one. Number two, by the way, in terms of opioid addiction, I can't remember exactly when, it was well over a year ago, I requested, I'm on a committee called the Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee, which deals with healthcare issues. And I wanted the chairman to bring the opioid manufacturers right before the Senate to raise their hands and to tell us when they knew that the product they were selling was addictive and killing people. He refused to call that meeting. But we have to hold people accountable for selling a product that is killing people. And thirdly, we have got to do a much better job in prevention. All right, why do people drift toward opioids? And one of the sad things that's going on in America, there is what the doctors refer to as diseases of despair. Do you know what I mean by that? Oh, you're a nurse, okay. And that is, we are actually in America today seeing a decline in life expectancy. Everybody hear that? For 3 years in a row, life expectancy in America is actually declining. rather than because of medical breakthroughs going up. And one of the reasons for that is that a lot of people have lost hope, all right? They're going nowhere in their lives, their kids are going nowhere, and they're turning to one product or another. We've got to deal with that. And I'll tell you something else. I did a very moving town hall in the largest high school in the state of Vermont where I live, and talking to the kids, just asking them why their friends or they are turning to drugs in general. And we got to do a lot better job in allowing kids to talk to each other, to understand the problems that they have, and not turn to opioids or drugs. So there's a lot to be said about it. Those are some of the areas that I think we've got to move on. Okay. You got a mic right here, microphone's coming, sir.
Well, first of all, I want to welcome you for coming to Newton. I think you have a very good audience, and you have a lot of loyal, dedicated people.
Thank you.
I'm 82 years old.
Why do you look younger than me?
Because I live in Iowa.
All right.
Okay? You may not want to hear this question. We're talking about health care. First of all, I've been waiting for you since I was 16 years old. And that's a fact. I remember exactly when I was wanting to see somebody with white hair ride up on a horse and save this country. Okay. Now,
I'm not a very good horseback rider, I'll tell you that. And
all right, forget the horse. How about a Harley? All right. My question is, how is your health?
thank you very much for asking, and my health is great. And I as everybody knows, ago, I think it's 3 months now, I had a heart attack. I was in the hospital for a couple of days in Las Vegas, got great care. It made me appreciate that not everybody would get that same quality care. I had 2 stents placed in myself. I had a blocked artery, and that's a procedure that is done about 1 million times a year, I am told. I rested up for, I don't know, a week, 10 days, back on the campaign trail, and we are running a vigorous campaign. So I would not be here today asking for your support if I did not fully believe that I have the strength and the vigor to take on what is obviously a very difficult and stressful job. But thank you very much. And I want to just say also that, my family so much appreciated all of the prayers and expressions of concern and well wishes that we received all over America. That meant a lot to us. Okay, I say hand right here. Tell us your name.
Oh, thank you. Hi, I'm Shauna. Welcome to Newton. I love everything that you stand for, but we all know how difficult it is to pass anything through Congress. What are you going to do to help bring Democrats, Republicans, conservative, liberals together to actually get things done?
Thank you, Shauna. You know what? Let me trade this mic. Bill, this one, yeah, is better. All right, Shauna, thanks for that question, because it's a very important question. And it's asked every day, and everybody is concerned about that. We see an enormous amount of divisiveness in this country, and sometimes that's even spilling over to outright hatred, which is not what we need. So let me start off by saying that in a democracy, people will have different points of view. But we got to be respectful about it, argue with each other, but we don't have to be hateful. And one of the things, and again, one of the things that upsets me so much about Trump is his bullying, his trying to intimidate people, and his trying to divide us up. We are Americans, whether you're black or you're white or you're Latino, you're gay or you're straight, whatever you may be, you are an American, and we don't have to be just viciously trying to destroy people, to win a point, to win an election. All right, so here's what I believe the answer to the question is. No magical answer, here's the answer. At a time of divisiveness, I believe there is more commonality in terms of people's views on issues than the media tells you that there is. Now, I go all over the country. You got Republican friends, and they're working for $12 an hour. You know what? Talk to them. They want to raise that minimum wage to $15 an hour. You got Republican women who are making 70, 80% on the dollar compared to men. They believe in equal pay for equal work. You got Republicans out there who can't afford to send their kids to college, and they understand that that's wrong. You got Republicans out there who are paying their fair share of taxes and wonder why Amazon and large corporations pay zero in federal income taxes. And more people ask me, one of the differences, okay, I'll get to you in a second, okay? People ask me what one of the differences in this campaign than last time when I was back in Iowa, and it's climate change. You got Republicans out there who are worried about the future. So to answer your question, what Trump tries to do is divide people up based on our superficial differences, what the color of our skin is or our religion or stuff like that. What I will try to do is to bring people together around our common interests. All right, everybody needs health care. Everybody has got to worry about climate. Almost all of us understand that if you work 40 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty, okay? Conservatives are concerned about a broken criminal justice system in which we are spending $80 billion a year locking people up. How do we work together on that? Conservatives understand that the immigration system is broken. How do we work together on that? So to answer your question, what I will try to do is bring people together around our common interests while Trump is trying to divide us up. That's how I think we go forward. Okay. Okay, give this gentleman a round.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom, Senator Sanders. My name is Ben, and I'm a student activist. I'm Jewish, and my social justice activism is grounded in Jewish tradition. That's why on my campus, I work for Palestinian rights and freedom. It's really inspiring to see you as a Jewish candidate lifting up this conversation and pushing it forward in this campaign. My question for you is, how can I, as a student organizer, push the other candidates and your colleagues in Congress to hold Israel accountable for its injustices against Palestinians?
Okay, thank you. Look, I'm going to answer your question, but I want to generalize it. This country, my father came to this country at the age of 17 from Poland. You know why he came from Poland? Because of terrible poverty and anti-Semitism came to this country. And everybody in this room, their families came from somewhere to flee something. Maybe you fled poverty, maybe you fled war, injustice of some kind. That's what America has historically been about, and something that we should be extremely proud of. Although we have had as a nation, remember when we were in school and read those school books, that America was the land of democracy and human rights and freedom. And the truth is that while we were not perfect, while people were talking about we had segregation in America, so it wasn't 100% true by any means. But that was the vision that we brought to the entire world. And I want to reestablish that vision. I want America not to have a president who cozies on up to authoritarian leaders all over the world, who has kind words to say about Kim Jong-un in North Korea, who apparently has, very warm relations with Mr. Putin, who is an authoritarian, or with Mohammed bin Salman in South Africa, in Saudi Arabia, who kills people, all right? So first of all, I want the United States to be a leader not in war, but in helping to solve international disputes by bringing people together diplomatically, all right? And that is certainly true of what's going on in the Middle East, okay? The function of U.S. foreign policy has got to be to bring the Israelis and the Palestinians together. We have got to show respect for the human needs and the dignity of the Palestinian people. Again, I lived in Israel when I was a kid. But we cannot have a policy that is just 100% pro-Israel and ignore the terrible suffering that's going on in Gaza and elsewhere for the Palestinian people. So we need an even-handed policy that brings the Palestinians and the Israelis, and believe me, there are problems of leadership on both sides. Not easy stuff. But that is what we have got to try to do, and that's what I intend to do as president. Okay, good. I got a question right here. This will be the, I apologize, we got to get on the road. So this is the last question, ma'am, right here.
Sorry, 1 second. I'm just going to pull up my notes. All right, thank you for taking my question. Real quick, before I get to it, I just wanted to draw your attention to some of us from Students for Bernie who are attempting to mobilize the student bodies on our campuses in order to demonstrate against rising tensions with Iran, as well as ongoing conflicts and occupations taking place in the region. I know so many groups already, like Code Pink, are doing great work on that, but even as the situation has cooled down a little bit, we're still bombing so many countries, we still have troops deployed in so many places in that region, and these new tariffs, sanctions, that Trump is putting on Iran, in my opinion, make conflict and destabilization basically inevitable. So we'd love your support in that as we go forward, as well as other great representatives like Ilhan Omar and Ro Khanna. And I also wanted to thank you for your campaigns and how it's inspired so many young people. Sorry about that. I have a question real quick, though.
Oh, I thought you were going to end on that note. That was a great... Okay.
All right. So my question is, through their actions in Iran, their actions in Guatemala, Chile, and so many other countries, the CIA and our larger security apparatus have caused a lot of harm, often under the direction of the executive branch. I want to know if your relationship to these agencies is going to be different than past administrations, and if you have any plans to curb the power they have in shaping our foreign policy.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
What's your first name?
Annie.
Annie?
Yeah, thank you.
Well, let me respond to Annie two ways. First of all, one of the exciting political developments that's taking place in America today is we're seeing young people like Annie and many others, and the Sunrise Movement and the young people from Florida who helped lead the effort for gun safety and all that. We're seeing young people getting involved in the political process in a way we have not seen. And given the fact, Annie, that you are the future of this country, that is enormously important. So we are working very hard, as you know, trying to get young people involved. So thank you for what you're doing. Let me answer the substance of your very important question. Just to set the record straight, I was elected to Congress from Vermont in 1990, took office in 91. And one of the very first votes that I had to cast was on the first Gulf War. And I voted against it. I voted against it because while Saddam Hussein was a terrible person, invaded Kuwait, I thought that there were ways to solve that issue and get his troops out of Kuwait without military force, all right? And I feared that it set a precedent, and I was not wrong. 2002, 2003, obviously, great debate in Congress over the war in Iraq. And I want to say that the two major, I want you all to think this for a moment, because it touches on Iran. What were the two major foreign policy blunders in our lifetimes? Help me out here. What were they? Vietnam was one and Iraq was the other. Okay? Now, when I was Annie's age, I marched against the war in Vietnam. Okay? I was a kid. As a United States Congressman in 2002, 2003, I helped lead the effort to prevent us from invading Iraq. And it gives me no pleasure to tell you that much of what I said on the floor of the House, which you can find in YouTube, about the destabilization that would take place, sadly turned out to be true. But here's my main point. When you think about Vietnam and you think about Iraq, two major foreign policy blunders, we lost 59,000 American troops in Vietnam. That was my generation. You got Vietnam vets who are sleeping out on the streets tonight. In Iraq, we lost 4,500 soldiers. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqis were killed. In Iraq, we have spent trillions of dollars. And last week, the Iraqi parliament voted to throw us out of their country. They don't want us anymore after we came to quote-unquote liberate them. What is the commonality of both of those terrible wars? We were lied to. We were lied to in terms of getting us into the war in Vietnam. We were lied to in terms of getting us into the war in Iraq. So to answer your question, I believe that you need an administration which does not lie to the American people, but tells them the truth. And in every way that I can. You know, we have the largest, most effective, strongest military in the world. But our job must be, whether it is Israel or Palestine or Iran and Saudi Arabia, it must be to use our power to bring people together to solve their conflicts in a way that does not involve war. And I will do my best under that principle to try to bring the world together, to strengthen the United Nations, to understand that at a time when we are spending $1.8 trillion as a planet on weapons of destruction, it makes much more sense to spend that money fighting climate change rather than killing each other. So, I want to thank you all very much for coming out. Look forward to your support on the enormously important caucus on February 3rd. Thank you all very much.